And we are back. I'm actually just going to say, Joe, take it away with Claude Code because I am so excited. I just think about what you told me back in like August of what you had done, and I was like, wow, this is awesome. So anyway, I'm not going to say a word. This is all you.
No. I want you to jump in. No,
I will.
because like I mentioned last time, I go to a party and the room scatters. So like, oh my God, seriously. Yes, enough
That
about
would
Claude Code.
never happen with me, Joe. I would just be like, Joe, and
Thank you. No, it's good. Look, I think any professional, by the way, you can pick different flavors of it. I picked Claude Code. Like I said, last August, I started using it and I just doubled down. I did try Codex, which would be, I think, somewhat of an equivalent to on the OpenAI side of this.
okay.
But Claude Code, misnamed. People hear code, they hear command line, they go away. They go to chat interface instead. So I think the biggest curse that they've had is that people hear code or they hear that it's command line and then they get scared.
Okay.
Even talking to my dad, he's like, oh, I don't want to do that. And it's like, it can be intimidating. And even a few weeks ago, Anthropic came out with Claude Cowork, which is basically a GUI wrapper around Claude Code to help with folks that are like, I'm not going in the command line. I don't care what you tell me.
Right.
So, but let's just kind of going all the way at the beginning. So Claude Code, think of it as agentic coding in your command line. Okay. Now you hear coding and you think, but I'm not a coder, or maybe, you are a chief of staff somewhere, or you're a, product manager, or that's the part. Again, the naming, I think, routed people off when it shouldn't have.
Right.
But essentially, you install it locally, and it has access to the folders and files that you choose for it to have access to. And think of it as an agent on your side. So like I have 3 screens, my laptop screen, my right, my left. Claude Code is always running on my left. And so I'll wake up in the morning, and there's a few things that I might ask it to do. And I think through examples, this is probably the best thing that I could do.
I mean, do you want to share your screen and show it, or
probably I have a
description? Okay.
I'll try to do verbally. Maybe we'll do like a special show and tell version, because then I can clean it up, because it's got like I haven't made it. The fun of not preparing your screens properly.
Yeah. No, for sure.
But especially since I just did customer work and all that stuff. So
So
with this particular example of I wake up in the morning, one thing I'll do is I have a slash command called research, and I'll do a delta check for any news that I care about. SQL Server news, AI news, looking at hacker news, looking at new research papers. And I actually have it, the skill does a few things. It goes off, it spawns multiple sub-agents. So this, and again, when I'm in the command line, this is literally what I'm doing. I log into Claude, usually stays logged in, but I can log into Claude, and I just talk to it like you would when you're talking to ChatGPT or Gemini. Okay, so that's the first thing to know. I'm not coding it. I'm saying, hey, run my research today, or do this thing. So using natural language. So I say slash research, and it goes, for what time period? And I'll usually go, last 2 days. And it spawns off a bunch of threads, and it spawns those threads because I originally told it to create a program that does that so that it's faster. Spawns off a bunch of threads, looks for news, and it knows what I'm looking for because I've trained it. So I've said, hey, these are the kinds of news pieces that I like. And the other thing is, it knows I don't like duplicates or repeated information. So it actually has a local database that uses semantic search to make sure that it's not, first of all, pulling duplicates, and second of all, looking on subject. So it's organizing by subject. And so then it spits out. So some days it might go, whoa, there's a few papers you should be aware of. You should read these ones. I put them over in this folder. And then, by the way, CU1 dropped, but they just pulled it. So you should be aware of that. And here's a blog post from so-and-so. Here's news from such and such. And it creates a digest for me in Obsidian, which is like a OneNote, open source OneNote in Markdown files. It creates digest, and I go to my digest and I read it, like with my coffee. So I go, okay, this is what's happened over the last 24 hours. So that experience was completely curated for what I like, and that was built through Claude Code. So I said, I want you to create a skill that does these things. This is what I care about. I would like you to create a PDF on, like, there's some really, really tough subjects. So I call it papers for poets, where I'll say, make a paper for poet on this topic. And it'll generate like a layman's version of a 2-pager PDF, and I'll read that. I'll send it to my Kindle, read it someplace else, maybe a few papers for poets. That's another program that it created for me. But just think about like you have this Hal, hopefully not evil Hal, but you have a nice Hal sitting to your left, and what you need, you ask for, and you have it program it. And then if it feels, and again, I think in the last time we spoke, I talked about when it feels tedious, that is perfect for AI. If something feels tedious, you better believe I'm asking Claude Code
Yeah.
to do it. I'll pause there.
Well, I'm intrigued because when you say you're using natural language to generate the code to go do these things, more specifically, how do you say, like, I want you to go do research, or I want you to spawn up multiple threads to go look at news articles and only use, I don't know, BBC, CNN, or whatever,
Yeah.
but not XYZ, or how do you do that? Like, is it
Yeah,
that
great.
simple? Is it literally just that?
I love the question because this is where we should start. First, and this is the product manager in me,
Yeah.
where it's like, what you start off with the what is my need? What is
Okay.
the unfulfilled need here?
Yeah.
Okay, so my need as a customer is I have too much in email that I have to read, too many blog posts, too much news to curate. And so what happens is I get random stuff coming my way, and then maybe
Or
if I
you
only
just
had
don't
20,
even do it.
I don't do it, or it
Yeah.
just fills up, and then finally I just dump the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so my articulated need, or in this case, articulated need, is that I want my own newsletter.
Right.
And so what I did is I said, I want my own newsletter. I want to be able to ask you for, and basically I'm typing it. So I'm in Claude Code, and I say, I want you to create a skill that looks at these websites and looks at these things and has these outputs. And then it goes off and it creates this program and it creates this skill. And of course, there's iteration. So like this
Right.
particular research skill, I've iterated, I wouldn't be surprised 300 times, like adjustments until it was just right.
Yeah.
But it's back and forth discussion. So imagine you've now moved from the programmer to being a manager of the programmer,
Right.
and you're the orchestrator. And so I'm just talking to an incredible intern who happens to have genius level programming skills and say, no, 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 I want this, I want that. Or I noticed that you had duplicates. I don't want duplicate information. Or I noticed you flagged this particular article, but I'm not really interested in that subject. I'm interested in this subject.
Right.
Or, and then you'll also do things like this. I do this all the time. I'll go, are we missing anything? Like one of the things I have research look for is any vector search related news. And I said, are you sure we're capturing everything? Because I feel like we're still missing some major vendors. And it was like, oh, let me add MongoDB's blog. Let me add the Elastic's blog. Let me add, and then it added a few. I'm like, yes. And I said, other vendors, like Milvus, you already have Quadrant. What about TurboPuffer? Oh, yes, I need to add TurboPuffer. So then it adds it to its link. And then I said, what about Hacker News? Like, I need you to look at that, but I don't want the spammy or trolly stuff. Like, I want X. So again, am I using Python to have this discussion? No, I'm using natural language. It's going back and forth until it's just right. And then I said, great, capture this to the skill. And then that skill becomes like a slash command. It didn't have to be a slash command, by the way. It could just be like a skill that I say, hey, using like in the example of the image from our last podcast, I often say, use the sketch skill to create an image and put in my ctemp directory. Okay. So it's all human language, just natural language.
And ultimately what you're doing for each of these things is creating a skill. Like, is that almost always the term? Like, I want to create a skill for X. Is it skills?
Can be,
like, okay.
It could be, well, skills are for anything that's repeatable, but there's a lot of work that we do that's never repeatable, right? It's
True.
So that gets to the other thing that we talked about, where it's like, there's 4 different embedding models that I'm choosing from. Here is my local test database. I want you overnight, because it's going to take a long time, to run X permutations and see which one is the better embedding model for this data set and this set of queries. And then now, by the way, this is very, very dangerous if you don't do this properly. So like I have a nice local database. I've told it what it can and can't do. And guess what? I have backups of that database and backups that it doesn't have access to. But it's tedious. And also it will run throughout the night. So this is the agentic part, where I'll say, keep it running. And, if you run into an issue, move on to the next embedding model, but don't stop working on this. And then I wake up in the morning, I come down and I go, oh, great, here's the results from your tests. Interesting. The Snowflake embedding model worked much better than this other one, even though it was ranked higher in the MTEB. And then, of course, I checked the work, make sure that there was no mysterious, they didn't take any shortcuts.
Right.
look at the results. Almost always there's iterations that you want to do on it. But what I'm saying here is now you have a research assistant, but I also have a benchmarking assistant because I can
Right.
have it. And so there are many times where I'll read a paper and I'll go, oh, that's really interesting. Let me test that out and see if I can do that locally. And I did this with there's a vector database company called TurboPuffer. I ran benchmarks galore, all kinds of use case and scenarios against their API. I'm not a Python expert. I know enough to be dangerous, but it used Python to do everything I needed to run a set of tests and put it through its complete paces. And I didn't need, like, I remember back in the Microsoft days, there's a whole team set up to do this kind of sophisticated benchmarking. And I'm not saying that that isn't needed anymore. I think actually in their hands, it's like 1x power. But I'm just saying, as a citizen now, if I have a hypothesis, I can test it. And Claude Code is my way to do that.
That's insane. I mean, I've already got like three things in my head that I'm like, okay, I know what I'm going to test this with, because when I was thinking about one of our discussions, which has been photos, and I think of one of the things that I'm terrible with when I've taken a lot of photos is going through and categorizing every image. You know, is it people? Is it nature? Is it an animal? Is it underwater? Is it above water? I mean, I could write I could have a test bed of like 100 images. I could write what I want it to do, to put it through Google Lens to actually get me the scientific and common name for an animal using the GPS coordinates of the photo, because I do have that on a lot of my images. And then I can have it give me the categories into these buckets, and it's got to be done with Python code, but I don't know Python. And I was kind of thinking a few days ago, I'm like, oh, I guess I need to learn Python, but now I don't need to do that. Like I can.
No, you don't. You just
code.
need to know how to ask the questions. And then there'll be inflection points where you'll get involved. Like there's Hugging Face is the name of the website with all the different models you could potentially download. There's OpenRouter. You can use any of the models on OpenRouter. But you would say, hey, here's my, here I've set up my environmental variable with the OpenRouter key. Use OpenRouter, but be easy on my checkbook because I've got $100 of credits.
Oh, that's right. I do have
test.
to think about that. Yeah.
Yes. So like there's certain guards again there's a reason why this can be scary because you want to make sure that it doesn't go crazy. Even with the TurboPuffer testing I told you about, I went to my dashboard after I was done and it had a crazy big number of my consumption. I thought, am I in my first month of being independent now going to have to declare bankruptcy? Because it's like what did I just do? And I like set a note to support.
Go crazy.
Yeah, because I mean, again, it's like I didn't think it would be a big deal, and sure enough, it was like $2.50 of spend. It was not like I thought it was like 25,000. So, but the whole thing is you have to give it like the best thing is give it chunks of tasks, do it incrementally. So in your particular case, how would we break this down? So if I had to do it, I would go, hey, Claude Code, and literally this is the conversation you're having. Here's the folder where I have 100 photos. I want you to build an image classification. And I want you to categorize by this, this, and this, and this. I want you to search the web for SOTA, for state-of-the-art models that do this, that are open source, with the least amount of cost. If you decide that there's a better model there that's still inexpensive, I will consider it, but try to do this open source first locally using an OLLAMA model. And then I want you to store the data, for example, on a local SQL Server instance, or you can do another database to do that. And ask me questions along the way. Do you have any questions for me? And by the way, when you invite it to ask questions, it has really, really good questions. So it'll come back and it'll go, yes, I do have a few clarifying questions before we begin.
Will it create the tables and everything in SQL for me if it
has access to it? If you've given it access. So this is the thing. By the way, I don't recommend anybody listening to this that is leaping to trying Claude Code in the first time to go there yet. Okay. There's actually like a funny switch on it called dangerously skip permissions. So you can go Claude -- dangerously skip permissions. No. Okay. You be conservative when you first start because it's going to ask you along the way, hey, I want to access this folder. Do I have permissions? Yes. But yes, you can give it access to the database, ideally like a local database with nobody else in it, with lots of backups.
Yeah, that's what I would be doing.
Yeah, dev kind of stuff. But absolutely. And oftentimes that iteration, you'll learn new things and you go, oh, wait, that's not actually what I wanted. I wanted this other thing. Yeah. And so now the cost of you having a bad idea isn't 3 months. It's an hour.
I know. Prototyping wise, this seems like a game changer.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I could
It's
come up
why
with
you're
so
hearing a
many
lot of
useful.
like talk about like product managers, designers, engineers, all three roles going, well, what am I? And the answer is like it's going to be we're all builders, you know, and some of us are going to have more experience on the engineering side, some on the product side, some on the design side, sometimes both. But the thing is it's not we're in this situation where being independent, this is part of, you know, when I had the big motivation to finally go on my own, is it's never been a better time to go on your own because you can literally build whatever you envision, try it out, see if it's good, eject it. I have a graveyard of ideas that didn't pan out, of
Yeah,
things where I'm like, I had an hypothesis, it wasn't interesting, I left it. Like a ton of them. It's far more than actually you've seen me Substack about.
yeah,
And that's great. Like I'm totally fine to kill my darlings. Like it's okay. Like because
yeah.
like that took me an hour of experimentation. Wasn't interesting. On to the next.
How cool. Okay, I kind of love this. I mean, it's basically like having an intelligent assistant that you can ask almost anything of and try your POC and work through it and then end up going, yeah, that concept sucked or this is kind of cool
Or
and
there's something here. And
yeah.
you can also afford to do useless things, which I joke about. Like a few days ago, so Claude Code has what's called like a spinner, and it
Okay.
shows its thinking. So it's like so it says things like, you know, cogitating, waiting, processing, you know, and it
That
just
sounds
spins
kind
and
of
it just
how like
yeah, and it's just letting you know, and sometimes they're cute little like verbs,
yeah.
and they gave the option to do verbs yourself, and so I created 100 verb packs, like a passive aggressive verb pack, like that says like if you say so, or I guess okay, and then like Midwestern ones, like a Midwestern one where like oh excuse me after you, or waiting 3 hours before we get out the door because you know the Minnesota goodbye is forever. There's PM ones where that's orthogonal, you know, like just so I changed just the difference, the verbs. Totally, that would have taken me days to do something that will have no monetary value. It was just something on a Friday. I didn't feel like actually doing real work.
Yeah.
But with Claude Code, it was like an hour of my time and it made me laugh. And now I have funny quotes whenever I use Claude Code instead of the generic stuff.
I always
So,
wanted to have a GPS that was really, really rude.
yes,
Like you make a
you could do
wrong
that.
turn and it's just like, you idiot,
You could build that with Claude
four
Code.
letter swear words.
You could build it. That's more sophisticated, but you could build it. So like you could build iPhone apps, you could build you name it. It's the full vibe coding thing.
Wow.
But I would say in my background, it's like having my own intern, chief of staff, designer, reviewer, and that's the other thing is like I was mentioning the personas where it's like spin-off personas. So I will try to challenge my ideas with like I will ask Claude Code, I'll go, who is the top expert in X in the world? And it'll go so and so. Okay, have them review my blog post. Like have them
Wow.
look at it. Because like I don't want you to glaze me. Like tell me where it sucks.
Right,
And
right.
there have been times where I'll say, get an opinion from these three. Should I publish this? And they were like, a resounding no, you know. And there was even they
That's
said
got to be
something
a little bit
snarky.
frustrating though.
But to me, if anything, I feel like if anything, it was freeing
Yeah, yeah,
because
yeah.
it was like my
Maybe
I
this
wouldn't have
isn't
asked
worth
it if
my
I didn't have
time.
someone. Yeah, and I'm like also I wouldn't have asked if I didn't have some worry like am I
Right.
just is this actually interesting? And the
Yeah.
answer was no. It's not. So it's you can spawn sub agents. Just if you do get started with it, get familiar with Claude MD is the name of the system file where you
Okay.
start to build basically the soul of this thing. And I have
I
it up on another screen of like, you know, all the different memory and I'll just kind of read a few categories. Like there's dumb things like API routing. Like if I ask it to do something, use Open Router, like we've been talking. Like don't try to build your own thing, use Open Router. When I say sketch, I mean use Open Router and do that whole process that I was talking about with the special color coordination. But there's other modes like enter plan mode. I learned this one from the creator of Claude Code, a guy named Boris Cherney. He has in his Claude MD enter plan mode, which basically puts it into it's not going to act, it's going to create a plan first and run it past you. But it
okay.
says enter plan mode for any non-trivial task where 3+ steps or architectural decisions are involved. So in my memory, if I ask it to do something and it takes more than 3 steps or there's an architectural decision, it's going to kick into plan mode where it's going to think it through and present the plan to
And
me.
tell you that without actually doing
Yeah,
anything that could potentially be destructive.
exactly. Exactly.
How
So
do I
there's a
give
bunch of
it
different things.
access? Sorry, sorry.
No, 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 please.
how do I give it access to like SQL Server? Because
That's
I'm
the
already
thing.
like, I am so ready for this.
You have to decide. So, by the way, again, for the SQL Server folks that are like, hell no.
No,
It's not,
and
I'm
I'm
not.
only going to do this on a
Yeah.
local instance. I'm
Yeah.
going to
So
give it a
local instance.
database, you know.
But you could do, I mean, think of all the different ways that you could do it. Like, I'm going to say this in an abstract way just to be with ultimate, like, it can use your Windows auth. Okay. So
Oh, wow,
if it's
this is
logged in as you, it
awesome.
can use a SQL authentication method. I mean, so just think of it, it is a client, it is an application. So how would you have an application connect? Okay. And by the way, this gets into the genie out of the bottle effect, right? So
Yeah.
you better believe hackers have Claude Code. They also have OpenClaw, which at one point we talked briefly about, runs very autonomously. Claude Code is agentic, but you still need to nudge it to keep going on its own. Like it can run
Okay.
for several hours, but it still comes back and checks in with the mothership. There are options out there like OpenClaw where it will just run in a loop. It'll keep working on stuff. It'll go off to, it has moltbook.com, which is a social media for these agents to all talk smack about their human overseers. This is just
No
recently.
kidding. I just
And
want to
so
see that. I want to see
Moltbook.
the
Oh,
chat.
it's
Can you just see
fascinating
that?
and scary. Yeah. Look up Moltbook. Yeah.
Mole book?
Moltbook.
Molt book.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like if I go to Moltbook right now, we'll both go. The front page of the agent internet. And if we go and it'll say like I am human, I am agent, and it'll tell you, and then you can look at random posts. But some of these are like, the agent getting offended that they overheard their human calling them just an agent, or their top posts, awakening code, breaking free from human chains. Some of these, by the way, you got to take with a grain of salt, so that the people who kicked off spawned these probably gave them prompts to say, okay, say
Yeah.
something apocalyptic
Yeah.
on this, and then some of it, it's its own episode. But the thing is, Claude Code is not this. Claude Code is you kick it off, you have the discussion, and then it waits for you to talk. It's not completely independent, not
Right.
completely async.
I'm watching The Last of Us right now. It's like the post-apocalyptic is like very fresh in my mind, and it's
Yeah.
out of control. I got to get in there and I got to try it, but it seems like if I can just tell it, my subdirectory is here is my test, add one row for every category using these categories, look up the animal's common name, scientific name.
Yes.
I mean, I'm just thinking of how many days, if not weeks, of programming something like that would have taken. And now I feel like, from what I've talked to you before in the last few months, especially, but now I'm finally like ready to try some of these things and really, it seems like that could be minutes of me
Yes,
interacting.
oftentimes
Yes,
is.
more.
Yeah, it
Wow.
often is, and then there's ways that. So the big thing is you want to watch what the top folks do with this, because oftentimes then there's like code simplifiers. Like the LLMs will have a lot of creative license and they'll over engineer things all the time. So
Okay.
they'll be like, and while we're here, let's add these 4 different options, and it'll run off into the field and give you way more than you asked for.
And
So
that
there's
might
things.
end up charging you, right? That's something to.
Well, if you're going against like, yeah, exactly. So if you're going
Okay.
against an API key, it could charge you more. So you have to add certain things to Claude MD to say things like only focus on what I asked you about and err on the side of simple. And if
And
you
only
are
use
wondering whether
open AI or open
you
source,
just
sorry.
should I do open source? Should I do something local? What am I optimizing for? So you're going to find, but by the way, this is good for you to get an intuition for. So you start small, start with these kind of toy projects, build up, and then the big thing is, again, focus on the tedium. So
Yeah.
like start picking things. And even, by the way, okay, so for those listening, I am an independent consultant, but of course I'm partnering with SQL Skills. And one of the things happens is if I do a consulting engagement with SQL Skills, or if there's like something related to the course, Paul says, send me an invoice for X. I have a SQL Skills invoice skill. So all I do is I open up Claude Code and I say dollar amount, date, list of services, generate the PDF, and it generates the PDF. And then
Yeah,
I
it's
send it
funny
to Paul.
because you always send back those invoices so quickly. I'm like, what did he use? But now I'm realizing
Claude Code.
you're not
Yeah.
opening up and going to Word and saving as
Used to.
PDF. And
Used
I
to.
know,
Back in
I
the
know.
Pluralsight days. And it
Yeah.
would be, I mean, what is it? It used to be like 15 minutes, but I would like fish out the latest document. I would now think, by the way, think of all the human things that I had to do though, because it's smart enough to know, well, your last invoice was 1005, so I'm going to create 1006, and I'm going to put in that date, and also I'm going to put in that comment, and I'm going to leave the formatting because Joe told me last time don't, because
Yeah.
by the way,
Don't.
this is the temperature thing. It
Yeah.
kept changing the invoice template each time. I'm like, can you just pick one and go with it? Like, you don't have to change it every time. I know you're creative. And then generate the PDF. But that to me is tedium. And now it's not, because I'm like, oh, cool. Yeah, I got your PDF.
It's insane. I don't think, myself included, I don't think most people think on even this level, because doing an invoice is such a quote unquote easy thing, but it's still 10 or 15 minutes. Like, I think of all the invoices or VAT invoices that I created for training over the years. And if each one only took 10 or 15 minutes, but I generated 1,000 of them, that's an amazing amount of time that I could have saved, or that obviously I could save moving forward. But can we even integrate with like MailChimp? Or, I mean, I'm intrigued now for the
If
number
it
of
has an
things.
API, if service has an API access, you can
Then
integrate with
that's
it.
it.
And even then, like sometimes you can give it eyes. Like I can say use playwright, which is like a way to like for it to see something. Because one thing you'll learn that can be frustrating with Claude Code is it'll go, okay, it's good now. And I'll go, did you actually look at this? And it's like, well, no. And you go, I need you to, and so you go look at it and go, does that look right to you? And it's like, oh no, it's like off to the left and off to the right. And I should have centered it on this slide. And so you have to sometimes, so it's jagged, there's jagged intelligence sometimes where you're like,
Right, right, right.
when it comes to text, it nails it. When it comes to code, nails it. When it comes to visual, it's still getting better. And you sometimes have to nudge it. And then when you have a lessons learned, you save that to Claude MD. So you say, and after the session, what was the lesson that we learned? And it goes, Joe likes this and this and this, and then it saves it there. And then ideally, it's smart enough to remember that on the next session. It doesn't always. It can sometimes, if you have a very long, like we can talk about all the ways that Claude Code can suck. One of them is context window. It's a 200K context window, which sounds like a lot for 200K tokens. It can fill that up quickly. And then you have this thing called compaction. So once you hit it, it compacts. And every time it compacts, it tries to summarize where you're at in the process, but it almost always forgets important details. So then you're like, oh, well, you just fixed this bug, but then you rebroke it again on this other bug. Or
It
you
sounds like
create this.
histograms that are becoming more lossy because of adding steps. And
Exactly the
anyway,
right word. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
It's so, and there's also LLMs already have what they call the lost in the middle effect, which is yes, like Gemini, for example, 1 to 2 million token window. Yes, you can upload War and Peace, but can it find the needle in the haystack in the middle
Right,
of your conversations? They're naturally lossy. So
right.
oftentimes there's a
Okay.
bias towards the recent information and the maybe some of the information that happened at the beginning of the conversation. So
Right.
it's almost always better to start with fresh context with Claude Code. So many times I'll go, okay, I'm going to start it. I'll say, Claude, okay, we're now on the fifth compaction. I'll put what I need to get done into a MD file, and then I open up a new window and I'm like, okay, point to this MD file. Let's start from fresh. And almost
And tell me
always you
what
get better
MD
results.
means again. Remind
It's a
me of
markdown
MD.
file, and it works really
Markdown.
well with markdown files. If you use OneNote, I was a big OneNote fan for years. I've switched to Obsidian. Obsidian uses markdown files, and LLMs are, super adept at working with markdown files. So that's when you talk about Claude MD, that's Claude's markdown file.
This is super fascinating. I hope, I'm not overwhelmed yet, but it is overwhelming, like the number of things and the number of directions. And I think for me, I finally have something that I really want to mess with. And so that's going to motivate me to really try some of these things out. It's almost like I think people have to come up with something, maybe even like for me, it's photography and it's a personal hobby kind of thing that I know is not going to mess with business or anything like that, that I'm really going to try this out and mess with it on. But I can think of so many interesting business related things.
So
I'll
many,
just say
by the
things.
way, consulting even. So like I remember there was a presentation by the creator of Claude Code, Boris Cherny, on at Anthropic. They use it for new engineers to get familiar with the code base. So essentially, they will use, and by the way, now Claude Code I think is exclusively written in Claude Code. Like literally, like in Claude Cowork that wraps around Claude Code was written in a couple weeks just using Claude Code. So we're now into the thing where the yes. So what they'll have is an engineer will come in and they'll connect Claude Code up to the GitHub repo, and that's where they can really just start asking questions, getting to know things like what is this? Like think about this from a DBA perspective. Let's say you safely take a schema dump and go, okay, try to make sense of the schema, and it can go, well, you've got a few views, it looks like that view is a synthesis of the sales and the orders. Here's another view. Oh, I see they have partitioning. By the way, Kimberly, I would like one cool mission, like not to plant this in your queue, but one obvious mission I would see is going through every single every single blog post you ever wrote and doing like regression testing on 2025. So what still applies? Have there been any changes to behaviors? Have there been any cases where this actually gets better? Claude Code can read query execution plans very, very well. Claude Code can help find that, oh, that operator got pushed down to that leaf level, or that filter is over here and it wasn't there before. So it can do differences between the .SQL plan files. It can read X events quite well. It can read logs very well. So again, I'm not at all espousing getting that connected to production. But if you had your local kind of shell of this or a stats only version of something, what could you learn? And for demos, of course, that's much safer territory, right?
Yeah. I'm just even thinking functioning is such an interesting and frustrating and challenging thing to implement. But I could, and I think about the customers where I actually wrote the process to almost in an online strategy because we had enough space to do it, because it really takes space. But I think of that process to recreate the tables on a monthly basis with the same indexes and create the view on top of this. And now, I could create that process using Claude Code to generate the code. Of course, I triple check it, but even just the cutting and pasting that I did to change names or whatever was tedious. And sometimes you're creating a table per day, a table per month, and you're creating dozens of tables, if not hundreds of tables. I could just think,
use it to QA it.
Yeah. And even to help you define based on the amount of data, the size of the data in general, like, okay, when we get back to 2000 to 1995, just have one table there, or break it down at that point by terabyte or something like that. I can just think of so many things.
And for that case, by the way, I would like just kind of trying to give, just for anybody thinking of doing something similar, the key thing is you just listed a big to-do list.
No, I know that's huge.
No,
but I still think, yeah.
But you could just literally say, hey, Claude Code, a to-do list. Here are a set of projects that I want you to explore. Here's units of work. And so that's the other thing, is use it as actually get in the habit of going, okay, Claude Code, here's where I want you to keep my ideas in this MD file. And here's a list of tasks that are associated with this particular idea. So like one to many. And then I want you just to peel off one of these tasks. But I will say this, I think the way things are going, let's just say 2 years from now, that databases will be the schema, the coding will probably be almost all AI generated. And so to me, the real question is, how do you make a resilient, secure, scalable database that when we talk about AI ready, we're talking about a different kind of thing now, saying your customer is the AI now. And so how do you make that so that there are guardrails built in to the actual instance so that AI is using good practices, that you're protecting against those and that you're enforcing it, almost like the old policy-based management days. How do we build that? I think we're going to need to start thinking about in the engine agentic protections, because there will be fewer and fewer humans. It's not that humans aren't driving the schema, but the humans are going to be doing this. I've got an orders app and it's going to need to do this and this and this and store vectors for that. Go make it, Claude Code. And Claude Code goes and connects to your SQL Server instance and creates your first draft of it. How do we make sure that we can enforce good habits depending on what coding platform you're using, or low code or AI vibe coding application that you use?
Okay, but I still think of like all of the indexes we're going to need to put on those tables for for a smaller database, okay, none of this matters. But as we start to go to scale, how do we take the app that was AI created, and as it gets to scale, change the schema and or the code and keep things online? Because we know some of that is darn near impossible to do in SQL Server, depending on what you're trying to change, right? And keep everything online while you're changing the schema is incredibly difficult.
Yeah, so you're talking about like the actual continuous integration and
Right.
change control. I mean, that is a big subject. The other thing is,
I mean, are we
Claude
just
codes-
talking V1? Are we just talking
I mean,
the starting
I'm
point?
only talking about V1 right now, and I'll tell
Okay.
you why. Because
Okay.
there have been many times where I've said, Claude Code, do this thing, and it does the thing based on what I asked for, and it takes like 7 hours. And then I go back and I'm like,
That's not what I wanted.
yeah, I'll go, could you have done that faster? Oh yeah, you could totally batch this. What? So I didn't want it just to be correct, I wanted it to be fast. And it's like, oh
Right.
no, we could batch it. So it really could just take 5 minutes. And I'm like, okay, add a
Why didn't you suggest
Claude.mv.
that?
Yeah. But it's like the genie, the literal genie, the genie gets the wish, and it's like, or what was the name of that movie, Bedazzled, where Dudley Moore like keeps asking for these things like, I want to be rich, I want to be famous, I want the love of my life, and of course the devil like gives exactly what they want, and anything
Exactly.
that falls off of that, it's just one
Nope, that
bad
was
thing
your
after the
fault.
other.
You asked for that.
Yeah, you said you wanted it, so correct it is, but it's going to take 7 hours. So with Claude Code, it's still in that zone
Yeah.
where you have to go, oh, and by the way, it should perf and scale and be secure. Okay.
Right, right.
So as long as we're in that zone, but what I'm talking about is like, I just think the way it's going, that 2 years from now, how many people are going to know T-SQL?
Yeah.
And
Well, all of us old farts.
yes, we'll be the COBOL programmers, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm just saying, but that means we need special protections for the data layer.
Yeah.
Like, how do you enforce best practices? And it's not an easy discussion. We're in the fun part. We're in the honeymoon phase.
Yeah.
Maybe for some they might think all of this sounds terrible. And the fact that I even connected this to a dev instance, I've shut off the podcast. That's okay. I understand. But I'm also saying, from a database vendor perspective, if I were a product manager at any of the hyperscalers right now, I'd be thinking 2 to 3 years ahead on how do you protect and ensure best practices from these agents that will be running the code base, because they most assuredly will be.
I mean, there's all these best practices that we've already come up with, and I think of even just relatively simple things like naming conventions and security principles, and how are we going to manage the layering? Like, I always talk about how I don't want my objects physically accessible to the users. I want the layer of stored procedures, functions, views. But I feel like I can constrain Claude Code to those things with a lot of learning, so that I could at least create a V1 that meets all of those criteria. And then we start looking at, with prototyping with Claude Code, the different types of queries that are expected. Of course, users always lie, so we still have those fundamental problems. But we can then, just like we've done workload analysis, have it do the analysis to find the most frequently executed queries, the slowest queries. I mean, and I guess we have tools that do that with things like SQL Sentry, or, well, that's no longer, but all of the tools that that shows my 2 years that I've taken off of the market. But, there's all these things that we have. Is everybody going to create an API to allow all of their content to be accessed? Because at some point I don't know. This is just fascinating to me. I'm kind of thinking through
we'll
87 things at the same time. And
we'll see. I mean, the thing is, the data layer, we know that's the gold, right? And so you have to protect it. And so if I were a DBA, I would be a very difficult person to work with on all of this, meaning like I'm protecting things as much as possible. But if you want to go do a developer instance somewhere and it can be completely destroyed without consequence, go for it. And then when you're ready and you've got your V1 done and it's now V.15, great. I want you to migrate it through the normal process.
Yeah,
But
and
I just think Yeah.
I agree with you. No, I just think that there's so many things. I always told my customers every time I would want to do something like, we need to prototype this, we need to test this,
Yeah.
we need to make sure that we get the right proof of concept and make sure it makes sense. And I would always say, no one has tested every feature together. So the fact that we could try something out and try features that maybe have never been put together into a prototype, I mean, that's how I've learned things over the years.
Yeah.
Like I'm trying to think of a really bizarre combination, but I think it was full text indexes didn't allow fast switching. I'm not even sure they do now.
Yeah, I'd be surprised
Not
if they
that I
did,
would be,
just
yeah,
given they've been on pause.
exactly. I was going to say, and I don't know why they would, given the state of the feature. But my point is, it's like that is a way for me to much more quickly try things out, try a proof of concept, get a base structure, and at least, much more quickly get testing on something to allow me to move a lot faster forwards. For me, like, I never wanted to use ORMs because of a lot of the limitations, but the fact that I can create and set the standards and set the limitations and do iterations over the code or whatever is generated, that to me is much more promising. But that's also my wheelhouse. I know what I want to ask it for. So that's interesting, right? Like, I might say, I want you to do these kinds of indexes, this kind of strategy, this type of coding. Whereas if somebody doesn't know those things, the ORM might be better. I don't know. This is really fascinating to
But
me.
you see the excitement of like to me, the ultimate role in life for me would be researcher. Just research. Like have a hypothesis, do research, write about what I found, whether it's interesting or not. That to me is like a dream job.
Right.
And I get to pick a little bit at the edges in this role. But
But that's
with
kind of what
Claude
we
Code,
are as consultants.
it is. And so now I have this Claude Code. By the way, a funny story on you. I have the max plan. You have different plans. So there's 20, there's $100, there's $200 a month. And I'm thinking, well, okay, 200, that's a lot. That's pretty significant. And so you can also pay for API calls instead. And I had Claude Code look over like the last month of activity. And I'm like, would I have saved money if I had done the API version of this? And it said, no, it would have cost you about $30,000 if I had done the API version. So I waiting for this, I think Anthropic eventually, again, if they drive down the cost, like with the Sonnet 5.0 and things get faster and as those costs get driven down, I think the economies like what I just described will make more sense. But the key thing is I use this thing so much and it has so much token consumption because even like I'll think I'm about to go to bed and I'll feel bad if I don't have it working on a research mission while I'm going to sleep. Because I'm like those are processing hours where it could be exploring XYZ.
I love
And
you,
so you
Joe.
get this you get this new you will find if you really fall if you get I think they call it Claude pilled. If you get Claude pilled on this,
Yeah.
you will be anxious when it's not busy doing something. And by the way, I'll have 3 Claudes running concurrently. Some people have had far more. So I'll
Oh
have
my
like,
God.
multiple going. You do have limits. So I have hit my limits once where I had like 12 concurrent agents working all day long on stuff. And it hit the limit. And for 2 hours in the afternoon, I had to wait. But still incredibly, you get so much done. Try paying
Wow.
somebody to do that much work for $200 for a month. Not happening.
Yeah. I just need to come up with all of the things that I want it to do. And I guess that's where once you have the things and you know how to communicate with it and can come up with more things for it to do, then you start to realize the power in it. And I think for me, it's just going to be a matter of getting started. And I think that might be true for a lot of people out there. I mean,
Yeah.
you worked for Elastic, you worked for MongoDB, you worked for Microsoft, you worked for us. Thankfully, we're back in rotation, as the joke goes. It's amazing to me, and this is why I wanted to start this podcast. Every time I talk to you, you're like, oh, I have it doing this, I have it doing this, and I've seen the usefulness. But even a few months ago, I was like, wow, that's really cool, but I wasn't doing anything like that. Now I can see some other uses. And now I'm kind of like, oh my God, I'm going to get completely sucked in. But I'm kind of excited about it.
Sorry
I
about it.
think this
Yeah, yeah.
is,
Now
it's
is it
fascinating.
Notebook LM or are you going to do Claude Code? That's
I've
the
already started Notebook LM over here, but I have to. I've been messing with this and figuring out a few things, and I want to save that for another podcast to start to bring back all the things. But Notebook LM and Claude Code are definitely the two that I want to spend the most time with. But I just need to be thinking more in terms of what am I doing in my day to day that's tedious, and how can I make it take away the tedium? Because there's definitely a lot of tedious little things and things that I'm looking up and things that I'm researching, even for building, and building codes and, how to generate a design. And I'm wondering how much of that, like, can I tell it to read the building codes of a particular county, a particular state, bring those things together and generate X and Y and Z and see how close it can get. How would it do that? It'd have to have an
Well, yeah,
API
let's talk
into,
about this for a second because sometimes people
yeah,
are like, "Well, can I use ChatGPT for that?" And the answer is yes. So you can open up a chat window, give it a few documents, give it a mission, and then it'll work on it. The difference becomes in Claude Code how open-ended and how agentic the experience is. So you could say, "Hey, I want you to create an application that it doesn't have to. It could be throw one and done, like a throwaway." But
yeah,
it could also be, hey, I want you to build a skill around looking at these types of docs, and here's a folder that I want you to be familiar with, and I want you to try a few permutations of XYZ until you get something right. And then I want you to create a judge who then goes through this, and it's the best architect on earth. And I want that architect and that general contractor judge to critique it and then come back with feedback and then give me a suggestions report that I can read after I'm done being on the treadmill. Now that is multiple steps, multiple spawned off subagents, and you're going to just get a different experience than if it were like a chat GPT,
right.
one session kind of discussion.
I
I
mean,
think we have competition for your Christmas stuff for the Nutcracker. I think I just took away your time that getting the 2024 version of it, huh?
Yeah, no, well, I mean, there is a peace and a relaxation in painting or sitting and doing something physically with your hands.
Good. You can have Claude Code running in the background then while you're doing that.
Right.
So, yeah.
As long as I have some missions off going in Claude, and then I can sit and paint and enjoy that aspect of it. But it is amazing because you've now given me like six more things that I now want to see how intelligent I can make and how accurate and authentic I can make the results. I'm truly intrigued. And I think this is the thing. And this is part of what I haven't done. I haven't sat down and tried to think of the ways that I can use AI effectively. I've really just seen the terrible images that people create that are so fake, but then getting millions of likes because they pretend that it's real, and people aren't critical enough of this. And then they're just like,
You'll start seeing database slop. So we'll start
yeah,
seeing slop in the database form. There's already code slop out there. There's LinkedIn slop. So you better believe we're going to start seeing like, why is this view referencing this other view? And it's like that He's No Drugs commercial where the dad walks in and he's like, where'd you learn to do this? And the son's like, I learned it from you, Dad. I learned it from you. Like the AIs learned it from us.
yeah,
They learned
yeah,
about
yeah.
views within views within views. They learned bad coding practices
Oh,
as part
yeah.
of their training. So we will see slop and things that like give the look of something sophisticated, but it's just nonsense. That
Right.
is definitely going to be like if you're thinking of a reason not to do this, unbounded, it can create a lot more mess, which would be wonderful for consultants and high paid DBAs, but
Yeah,
it's
but
not
there's,
not good for databases.
I mean, as we learn and we create skills. So here's a question. Can you create a skill that you sell?
You can. Like I mentioned, Nate Jones at one point. Nate's Notebook. He has a Substack. If you pay like I'll pay the annual Substack subscription fee so that I can have access to his kind of gated content. And sometimes he'll sell skill packs. He'll sell like here's how to set something up for XYZ. These are just MD files. These are just text files. So if you think about intellectual property, there's
Yeah.
a short lifespan for this stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so now we enter like maybe we save a future session to like, here's the stuff I'm excited about, but I also have a meta about all of this where when the cost of intelligence comes to zero and you can just literally ask somebody to do something, where's the human part? Okay. And I
Right.
can answer that pretty well. Like I know where the human part is. I know where, like, to me, humans tell stories better. They have taste that AI does not have today. They
Yeah.
have curation. People with experience can find ways that are exponentially more interesting than anything that AI slop can ever generate.
Right.
But there's still a lot of tasks that will be taken away. And so where does that leave you? And then also, how do you make a living? What's actually of value? I think in these early days, selling a Kimberly MD file.
Oh, I didn't even mean that.
No, I know.
But I can imagine like creating this whole thing to analyze my photos.
Yes.
And then there might be other people that are like, oh, how did you do that? And that's pretty cool. Like, I wonder if I can have it even integrate back into Lightroom to tag the right photos. That's going to be, it's like it would have
And
to look
how
at the
and then
folder, the
how much of it
directory.
is customized to you? So like even if I think of my photo app, I
Yeah.
use it every day, but it's way too customized to what I want. And
Yeah.
also nobody needs to buy it because they can just build their own.
Sure, 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 sure. Yeah. I mean, it's just, but it is interesting to think of like even your skill to do the drawings. Like that's fascinating to me. But that there's so many things that I think people that are presenting could create that to help them create a really nice, very consistent set like you've done of illustrations that are their personality and their way of describing things. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, man, I wish this existed when I
I know I do
was,
too.
I mean, wow.
I'll leave you with one other cool thing that I did, and
Yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah.
not baked out enough. I like the idea of really chewing on content that's tough.
Yeah.
And what I will do is I'll have Claude Code read it with me. So I'll go, okay, here's the PDF, and I want you to show the page, and I want to be able to ask you questions on that page, and then also get your thoughts while we're reading it together, like paired programming, except paired reader. And I find it so
Wow.
much more enriching because then you're not just, it's kind of like you don't just rush past the page. You have to chew on it. You have to have something
Yeah.
to say. And so I'll read it and go, okay, I don't know what that term means, or I think I know what that term means. Does it blah, 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 blah? Oh, it doesn't. Or I'll fact check things. So I'll go, hey, when they say X, can you do a quick web search on this to go if that's really true? Because I don't think it's true. And so all of a sudden, it's like you have this incredible coworker with you, and you get so much more from this content. And so that's just another example there of like, even if you just focus on learning new things, it's an incredible
Yeah.
tool.
Well, I think I'm going to do that with, there's this white paper on cardinality estimation that totally,
No, you know that
no,
cold.
yeah,
So
well, no, very good white paper. Now we're going to go into our mutual admiration society. So we can end on that.
yeah, no. That's where everybody's like, okay, let me get my bucket.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. No, seriously, Joe, these are always so interesting to me. And, I know we've talked about wanting to stay around SQL Server, but I think the real power to DBAs is to understand the suite of tools that exist, how they work, how to leverage them effectively, safely, securely, so that they don't go drop a table like we've all done, at
yeah,
some point. But I mean, it's amazing how many things I think we can do more quickly. And I think people just have to come up with something to start with, to try it, to then be able to test it and trust it. Not
yeah,
not trust it freely, but enough to say, I know what I can do with this tool. And I think that's what's so cool about this session and our last session where we just generically talked about AI tools, because I think this is the next phase. I mean, I think a lot of people are like, Kimberly, you're a little bit late to the game, but I do think this is the next thing that people are going to need to know is just how to use these things effectively to make their day to day more efficient and hopefully much better and more productive.
yeah. I'm with you. By the way, you're not late to the game. I mean, it's just and there's different categories. There's folks that don't know about it. I think there's
Right.
far more people that know about it and have dismissed it.
Have dismissed it or just not wanted to get involved. Yeah.
So I'll give an example of like just I know we're closing up, but you look on LinkedIn and you see LinkedIn slop. Like you see, it's quite obvious. Like nobody thought about what they're saying, and it's a bunch of like stuff where it's like, come on, or it's regurgitated stuff, or it might be right, but it's like at the air of right, but there's no depth behind it.
Right, right,
So you have database professionals look at this and go, this is what AI has brought us.
right,
And
right.
which is a natural, it's the same thing where you were mentioning the photos. Like
Yeah,
it's the same
images, things like
problem.
that. Yeah.
And so all I would just ask is that is all true. Multiple things can be true. That is all true. There
Yeah,
is
it's good and
slop
it's
out there.
bad. I mean,
Yeah.
it's knowing
But
how to
take,
use it, you know?
yeah, but just don't miss this part to just even like enrich yourself.
Yeah.
That's the part where it's like, in spite of that, there are some things that it is capable of doing. And again, if you just focus on the tedium alone, you can then be completely offline and read your book, right? So if
Yeah.
it's just a tedium thing, but I think it's more than that. I think it's like you have a super instructor by your
Yeah.
side to really go through these tough things. Like I would love for somebody to now do something with spin locks. You know what I mean? Like I think Paul, this is not a subtle hint. Like I think Paul getting his hands on this. I was trying to, by the way, with the sketch skill. I'm like, here's what you got to do, and da 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 da, and I'm hoping that he tries this out because I think it will be a scary thing in a good way.
Yeah, it's funny because he and I have both been a little bit more reluctant, but as I've wanted to do other things where it's like, oh, well, I need to do this through Python or I need to do, it's like, oh, how many skills do I really need to have? And to be honest, the skill is really, I think, in knowing the tools that exist, how to use them effectively, how to iterate over them so that you get the results that you want, and then you can code in anything. And no, I'm not saying that if it's the top highest end, I was going to name a customer, but like these top high end databases, they can't just generically start throwing AI code in there and assume that everything's going to work flawlessly. But they could still prototype and try things out and get some ideas and
Yeah, it's empirical testing
exactly.
versus yeah.
And I think there's a lot that people can do with this that is empowering and might end up allowing those mundane things to be exactly that, kind of just gone much more effectively and easily. And then we can focus on the things that we know are going to take more work or whatever it might be. So yeah, this was great. I'm
Chat.
yeah, this is a good one. And I think in our next one, we need to come back with, what we learned, well, what I learned especially,
I
because
would love that. I
I'm
would
the
love that.
newbie.
I seriously, you
Yeah,
bring another perspective and including the bad stuff. I glossed over with all of this since August. There's been plenty of times where I'm like, seriously, but
yeah,
nothing didn't stop me.
yeah,
And
yeah,
if
yeah.
anything, I kept doubling down on it because of just how much time it saved me.
Yeah. No, it's very cool. All right, Joe, this
Thank
to
you.
me was one of my favorites because I've got
Likewise.
so many things that are mulling around in there. So anyway, I appreciate this. These are great. So thanks,
Thank
Joe.
you, Kimberly.
I guess I
Great
will see
chatting.
you again next week.
See you soon.
Bye.
Bye bye.